The Talaxians were on the verge of extinction, brutally beaten down to their last remaining worlds, when they decided to gamble it all on the only warriors crazy enough to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, the goddamn humans. The Zorgons had smashed the once mighty Talaxian fleets to burning scrap. Colony after colony fell beneath the ruthless alien onslaught. In desperation, the Talaxian High Council met in secret and voted to send an urgent plea across the stars to a young species known for its tenacity and unpredictable tactics. A species that just might be the Talaxians' only hope. The distress call reached Earth and found its way to Ryan Cox, an ex-Special Forces operator who now hired himself out to the highest bidder. The astronomical paycheck got Ryan's attention, and the chance to fight an enemy that had the mighty Talaxians pissing themselves sealed the deal. He pulled together his dream team for a mission like this: Jack Boom Boom McGee, who could make a bomb out of anything and thought every operation needed more explosions; Nikolai Iceman Volkov, a sniper who put the cold in cold-blooded killer; and Kenji Ghost Nakamura, an infiltrator who could hack any system and slip through any defense. But as Ryan prepped his team to ship out, he received an encrypted message from his Talaxian contact with an ominous warning. Not everyone on the Talaxian High Council wanted the humans involved. There were powerful alien leaders who would rather see their civilization burn than be saved by a bunch of unpredictable, uncontrollable humans. Ryan gritted his teeth. He and his team were charging headfirst into a shitstorm of bullets, bombs, and alien politics, and the fate of an entire species hung in the balance. Humanity to the rescue. What could possibly go wrong? The human ship dropped out of FTL, and Ryan got his first glimpse of the Talaxian homeworld. The once verdant planet was pockmarked with blackened craters and crisscrossed with glowing scars. As they descended through the atmosphere, Ryan saw the shattered remains of great cities and the twisted wreckage of warships strewn across the landscape. A grim-faced Talaxian delegation awaited them at the landing pad. At their head stood Rigor, a battle-hardened warrior with a cybernetic eye that glowed an eerie red. He sized up the humans with a scowl. "So you're the mighty warriors the Council thinks will save us. I've fought alongside many species, but never humans. I hear you're unpredictable, reckless even." Ryan met Rigor's gaze. "We get the job done, that's all that matters." He led them into a fortified bunker, down to a war room where holograms of ships and planets floated in the air. Rigor jabbed a finger at a blinking red dot. "This is your target, a Zorgon research facility on a planet they've occupied. Our spies tell us they're developing a new weapon there, something that can neutralize our ship's defenses and leave them helpless. We need you to infiltrate the facility and steal the weapon's plans." Ryan studied the hologram. "We'll need equipment, transportation." "You'll have what you need," Rega cut in. "But let me make one thing clear. If you fail, if you're captured, the Talaxian government will deny any knowledge of your mission or your existence. You'll be on your own." As the team geared up and shipped out, Ryan caught Rigor watching him, his expression unreadable. There was no trust there, only a desperate hope that the humans would succeed where the Talaxians had failed. They slipped onto the occupied planet under cover of darkness. Kenji worked his magic, hacking the facility's security systems and opening a path inside. They crept through sterile corridors, neutralizing Zorgon guards with silenced weapons and quick, brutal hand-to-hand. But when they reached the heart of the facility, they found something far worse than a new weapon. In chambers of reinforced glass, Talaxian prisoners floated in bubbling tanks, their bodies warped and twisted. The Zorgons were using them as test subjects. Ryan's grip tightened on his rifle. He thought of the mission, of the millions of lives that depended on those weapon plans. Then he looked at the prisoners, their eyes pleading. "Change of plans," he said. "We're getting them out, all of them." Alarms blared as they shattered the tanks and pulled the prisoners free. Zorgon soldiers poured into the room, and the air filled with the chaos of close-quarters combat. They fought their way out, step by blood-soaked step. In the mad dash for the extraction point, a plasma bolt caught Kenji in the side. He fell, blood seeping between his fingers. Ryan hauled him up, half dragging him into the waiting ship. They broke atmosphere, Zorgon ships hot on their tail. Ryan plugged the plans into the computer and transmitted them to the Talaxian fleet with seconds to spare before jumping to FTL. In the sudden silence, Ryan looked down at Kenji, pale and still on the deck. He checked for a pulse, his own heart pounding. It was there, weak but steady. They'd done it. They'd gotten the plans and saved the prisoners. But as Ryan watched medics swarm around Kenji trying to stabilize him, he couldn't help but wonder. Rhaegor was waiting for them when they landed, his face a thundercloud. You deviated from the plan. You risked the entire mission for a handful of prisoners. I knew we couldn't trust. Ryan stared down Rhaegar, fury burning through the pain of his wounds. Reckless. We saved lives. What the hell were we supposed to do? Leave them to be tortured and experimented on? The Talaxian Prime Minister stepped between them. Enough. What's done is done. The humans brought us the intel we needed, and they struck a blow against the Zorgons. That's what matters. Rhaegor's cybernetic eye pulsed, but he said nothing. The Prime Minister turned to Ryan. You and your team have our gratitude. Our scientists will begin work on a countermeasure immediately. Ryan found himself working alongside Talaxian researchers, including Rhaegar's daughter Zara. She was brilliant, Ryan had to admit, but she was also stubborn as hell. They clashed over everything from the interpretation of the stolen plans to the best way to implement the countermeasure. You're not listening, Zara snapped, slamming her hand on the table. If we route the power like that, it'll fry the whole system. And if we do it your way, it won't have enough juice to be effective, Ryan shot back. But as the days went on, their arguments became less heated. They began to anticipate each other's thoughts, to build on each other's ideas. They made progress, the countermeasure taking shape under their combined efforts. Then the Zorgons attacked. Alarms blared through the city. Ryan grabbed his gear, his team falling in around him as they raced to the front lines. The Talaxian defenses were crumbling under the onslaught, soldiers falling left and right. Ryan and his team waded into the fray. Jack's explosives blasted holes in the Zorgon lines. Nikolai's sniper fire picked off key targets with icy precision. Kenji, still recovering but refusing to sit out the fight, hijacked enemy drones and turned them against their masters. But it wasn't enough. The Zorgons kept coming, a relentless tide of death. Ryan spotted a Zorgon command ship, its weapons raining destruction on the city. He grabbed Rhaegar. That ship is coordinating the attack. We take it down. We turn the tide. Rhaegar hesitated for a split second, then nodded. He barked orders, and a squad of elite Talaxian soldiers joined Ryan's team. They fought their way to the command ship, boarding it in a hail of laser fire. The battle was brutal, a close-quarters melee of blood and screams. Ryan saw a Zorgon soldier take aim at Rhaegar's back. He didn't think, just moved, tackling Rhaegar out of the way. The laser blast seared across Ryan's shoulder, the pain sudden and blinding. Rhaegar's eyes widened. He pulled Ryan to cover, laying down suppressing fire. You saved me. Why? Ryan gritted his teeth. We're in this together, like it or not. Together, the humans and Talaxians took the command ship. The Zorgon attack faltered, then crumbled. The invaders retreated, leaving the smoking ruins of the Talaxian capital behind. Ryan stood in the rubble, his shoulder a mass of burned flesh. Around him the survivors emerged, shell-shocked and bloodied. Zara found him, her face streaked with ash. We won, she said, but there was no triumph in her voice. Amid the smoking ruins of the capital, the humans and Talaxians worked side by side, clearing rubble, tending to the wounded, and fortifying what was left standing. Ryan gritted his teeth through the pain of his injuries, refusing to rest while there was work to be done. As he helped shore up a crumbling wall, a hooded figure slipped out of the shadows. Commander Cox, I have information you need to hear. Ryan whipped around, hand on his sidearm. Who are you? The figure lowered their hood, revealing a scarred Talaxian face. A friend. There's a Zorgon weapon, one that could end this war, but it's hidden deep in their territory. Ryan narrowed his eyes. If you know about it, why not tell the Talaxian military? Because getting it would be suicide. Only someone crazy enough would even try. The Talaxian's gaze bored into Ryan's. Someone like you. Ryan's mind raced. The chance to end the war, to stop the bloodshed. He straightened, ignoring the twinge of pain. I'll do it. Ryan! Rigor strode over, his cybernetic eye gleaming. I heard everything. If you're going, I'm coming with you. Ryan blinked in surprise at Rigor's use of his first name. He nodded curtly. Assemble a team, small and elite. We need the best if we're going to pull this off. Zara stepped forward, chin lifted defiantly. I'm coming too. Ryan and Rigor began to object, but she cut them off. You need me. I know Zorgon tech better than anyone here. In the end, they assembled a team of the most skilled humans and Talaxians. They prepped in tense silence, checking weapons and reviewing intel. Then they shipped out, slipping through enemy lines and into the heart of Zorgon space. They navigated treacherous asteroid fields, the chunks of rock providing cover, but also threatening to smash their ship to pieces at any wrong move. They dodged Zorgon patrols, holding their breath as the enemy ships passed perilously close. Finally, they reached their target, a heavily guarded research station. They infiltrated under the cover of darkness, neutralizing guards and security systems with ruthless efficiency. Inside, they encountered resistance at every turn. Zorgon soldiers swarmed the corridors, laser fire crisscrossing in deadly webs. Ryan and Rigor fought back to back, their differences forgotten in the heat of battle. They pushed deeper into the facility, following the stolen schematics toward their objective. But when they burst into the central lab, they found not a weapon, but a Zorgon in a lab coat, hands raised in surrender. The scientist, Zorax, was a defector. Sickened by his species' cruelty, he wanted to help the Talaxians. I have information, he said urgently, the key to ending this war. Just then a laser blast hit Zorax in the chest. He crumpled, blood pooling on the sterile floor. A Talaxian stepped out from behind a console, smoke curling from his rifle barrel. Traitor! Rigor roared, leveling his own weapon at the Talaxian mole. But more Zorgons flooded in, alerted by the commotion. In the chaos of laser fire and shattering glass, the mole grabbed Zorax's limp form and disappeared. We have to go, Zara yelled, dragging her father toward the exit. Ryan laid down covering fire, buying them precious seconds to escape. But as they reached the door, a stun blast caught him from behind. He fell, his vision tunneling. The last thing he saw was Rigor's stricken face as the door slammed shut between them, leaving Ryan in the hands of the Zorgons. Ryan's world was pain. Every breath sent fire lancing through his battered body. Every movement tore at his wounds. The Zorgons had been merciless, their interrogation techniques brutal and unrelenting, but he had endured, clinging to the hope that his team would come for him. The door to his cell blasted open, and through the smoke and rubble stepped Zara and Nikolai, weapons blazing. They cut down the Zorgon guards with ruthless efficiency, Nikolai's sniper rifle cracking like thunder, Zara's blaster spitting searing energy. They were at Ryan's side in an instant, Zara's hands gentle as she unlocked his restraints. Can you walk? She asked, her voice tight with worry. Ryan pushed himself upright, gritting his teeth against the pain. I'll manage, we need to get out of here. As they moved through the corridors, alarms blaring and lights flashing, Ryan's mind raced. Through the haze of pain he grasped at a memory, something he'd overheard his captors discussing. A fail-safe in the Zorgon superweapons, a weakness that could be exploited. They burst out of the prison into chaos. Zorgon soldiers swarmed like angry hornets, their weapons spitting death. Nikolai dropped to one knee, his rifle cracking as he picked off targets with icy calm. Zara and Ryan pressed forward, blasters blazing, fighting for every inch. In the distance, explosions lit the sky as Rigor and the rest of the team sabotaged the Zorgon fleet. But more ships were lifting off every second, the superweapons glowing with baleful energy. Ryan's lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but he pushed on, driven by desperation. They had to reach Rhaegar, had to find a way to stop the Zorgons before it was too late. A plasma blast seared past his head, close enough to singe his hair. He whirled, firing back, dropping the Zorgon soldier with a shot to the chest. More took his place, a wall of armored bodies and bristling weapons. Nikolai and Zara closed ranks around him, forming a deadly triangle of interlocking fire. They fought like demons, like warriors possessed, but the Zorgons kept coming. A grenade detonated nearby, the shockwave slamming into Ryan like a hammer. He staggered, his vision blurring, his ears ringing. Through the smoke and fire he saw Zara fall, a crimson blossom spreading across her shoulder. Nikolai dragged her to cover, his face grim as he returned fire one-handed. Ryan's heart clenched. They were being overwhelmed, the weight of the Zorgon numbers bearing down on them like an avalanche. They needed a miracle. And then, like an answer to a prayer, Rhaegar's voice crackled over the comms. "Ryan, if you can hear me, we need that fail-safe intel now. We're almost out of time." Ryan closed his eyes, reaching deep into his battered mind, grasping for the memory. It was there, just out of reach, taunting him. He could almost see it. A plasma bolt struck the ground inches from his foot, jolting him back to the present. He opened his eyes, his gaze locking with Zara's. In her eyes, he saw pain and fear, but also something else. Trust, belief, in him. He took a deep breath, the details of the failsafe crystallizing in his mind. He knew what they had to do. "Rhaegar," he said into the comms, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Listen carefully, here's what we need to do." Over the comms, Ryan relayed the failsafe details to Rhaegar in clipped, urgent tones. The Zorgon flagship loomed ahead, a behemoth bristling with weapons and shielded by a swarm of fighter craft. The failsafe, a pulsing red sphere at the ship's heart, was their only hope. Rhaegar's voice crackled back, grim with understanding. A one-way trip. They armed up in silence, checking weapons and armor with the ease of long practice. Zara and Nikolai would lead the sabotage efforts, buying them time. Ryan clasped their shoulders, meeting their eyes. No words were needed. The Zorgon fire intensified as they approached, the flagship's defenses lashing out. Their own ship bucked and shuddered, alarms screaming. Ryan and Rhaegar braced, focused on their target. They hit the flagship like a hammer blow, breaching pods punching through the hull. Into the heart of the enemy they plunged, weapons spitting fire, carving a path of destruction. Zorgon soldiers swarmed to meet them, a tide of armored bodies and flashing blades. Back to back, Ryan and Rhaegar fought, moving in perfect sync. Where one blocked, the other struck. Where one fell back, the other surged forward. They were a whirlwind of violence, leaving a trail of broken Zorgon bodies in their wake. But for every soldier they cut down, two more took their place. Ryan's muscles burned, his wounds screaming. Beside him, Rhaegar fought on, his face a mask of blood and determination. Inch by bloody inch they pushed towards the failsafe chamber. The doors loomed ahead, heavily guarded. Ryan and Rhaegar exchanged a glance, a whole conversation in a heartbeat. As one, they charged. The battle was brutal, a maelstrom of slashing claws and searing plasma. Ryan felt his flesh burn, felt the bite of Zorgon's steel. But he pushed on, driven by desperation, by the knowledge that everything hinged on this moment. "You!" Ryan snarled, recognition flooding through him. The commander had been a shadow at his heels throughout this war, always one step ahead, always mocking. The commander bared his teeth in a vicious grin. "You've come far, human, but this is where your path ends." They clashed like titans, fists and feet blurring in a deadly dance. The commander was fast, stronger than any Zorgon Ryan had faced, but Ryan fought with the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. Around them, Rhaegar battled towards the failsafe, carving through the commander's elite guard. His cybernetic eye gleamed, his rifle flashing. Ryan felt the bite of the commander's claws, felt his blood spill. His vision blurred, his strength waning. The commander loomed over him, triumphant, claws raised for the killing blow. With a roar of defiance, Ryan surged up, slamming his head into the commander's face. Bone crunched, the commander reeling back. Ryan pressed his advantage, raining blows, pouring all his remaining strength into one final assault. The commander fell, and Ryan fell with him, his legs no longer able to hold him. Through dimming eyes he saw Rhaegar at the failsafe, saw him slam his fist into the control panel. The world went white. The failsafe shattered, a pulse of energy ripping outwards, engulfing the flagship, the fleet, everything. As the darkness closed in, Ryan heard the cheers of the Talaxian fleet over the comms, heard Zara's voice thick with tears. They had done it. They had won. The pulse faded, the light of the failsafe's destruction dimming. In the sudden silence, Rhaegar staggered to his feet, his armor scorched and dented. He limped through the wreckage of the flagship's bridge, past the bodies of fallen Zorgons and Talaxians alike. There, amidst the rubble, lay Ryan. Rhaegar knelt beside him, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned for signs of life. But he knew, even before the scan confirmed it. Ryan was gone. Gently, Rhaegar lifted Ryan's body into his arms. The human was light, his armor shattered, his flesh torn. But in death, his face was peaceful, a faint smile on his lips. He had given his life for the Talaxian people, for a world not his own. Rhaegar carried Ryan out of the flagship, past the cheering Talaxian soldiers, past the burning wrecks of Zorgon ships. They had won, but the cost had been high. In the days that followed, the Talaxians mourned. They mourned for their fallen warriors, for the cities and lives destroyed by the Zorgon onslaught. But most of all, they mourned for Ryan, the human who had become one of their own. Rhaegar stood before a vast crowd, Ryan's body lying in state on a raised platform. The Talaxian officer's voice was rough with emotion as he spoke. Ryan Cox was more than an ally. He was a friend, a brother in arms. He fought beside us, bled for us, and in the end he died for us. His sacrifice will never be forgotten. As Rhaegar spoke, Zara stood at his side, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Nikolai and Jack were there too, their faces grim, their posture rigid with grief. The bond between our peoples, forged in the fires of war, will endure, Rhaegar continued. Ryan showed us that humans and Talaxians are stronger together. His legacy will live on in the alliance between our worlds. The crowd roared its approval, a sound that shook the very ground. For a moment the grief was pushed aside by a surge of hope, of determination. They would rebuild. They would stand together against any threat. But even as the Talaxians began the long process of reconstruction, a new shadow loomed. Dr. Zalox, poring over captured Zorgon data, made a chilling discovery. The Zorgons were not alone, he told Rhaegar in a tense meeting. They were being supplied, supported by an outside force, a group known as the Syndicate. Rhaegar's cybernetic eye pulsed red. Who are they? What do they want? I don't know, Zalox admitted. But whatever their goals, they are no friends to the Talaxians or to humanity. Rhaegar slammed his fist on the table, the metal denting under the blow. The war with the Zorgons had been just the beginning. A new fight was coming, one that would test the Talaxian-human alliance like never before. He thought of Ryan, of the sacrifice he had made. Rhaegar would not let that sacrifice be in vain. He would lead the Talaxians against this new threat, and he would call upon humanity once again to stand with them. The Syndicate, whoever they were, would learn the same lesson the Zorgons had. They would learn the strength of the bond between Talaxians and humans, a bond sealed in blood and fire. They would learn to fear the name of Ryan Cox, the human who had given his life for a distant world, and in doing so had changed the course of an interstellar war. Rhaegar strode from the meeting, his purpose clear. He had a military to rebuild, an alliance to strengthen, and a hidden enemy to uncover. The fight was far from over. The Talaxian human coalition delved deep into the Syndicate's shadowy network, tracing connections and following leads with dogged determination. Rhaegar and his human counterparts pored over intercepted communications, interrogated captured operatives, and pieced together a damning picture of corruption that reached to the highest echelons of Talaxian leadership. The trail led them to a shocking revelation. The mastermind behind the syndicate was none other than Zoltar, Zara's own father and a respected member of the Talaxian High Council. The betrayal struck Zara like a physical blow, leaving her reeling. "I don't understand," she whispered, staring at the damning evidence splayed across the screens. "How could he do this? To his own people?" "Power," Rhaegor growled, his cybernetic eye pulsing. "Greed. He's been playing both sides, prolonging the war for his own gain." Zara's hands clenched into fists, her eyes hardening. "I have to confront him. I have to make him answer for what he's done." Rhaegor laid a hand on her shoulder. "Zara, it's too dangerous. Your father is a powerful man with the syndicate at his beck and call. If you confront him, he may—" "I have to do this," Zara cut him off, her voice steel. "For my people, for the truth. I can't sit by and let him continue his lies." Rhaegor searched her face, saw the resolve burning in her eyes. Finally he nodded. "I understand, but you're not doing this alone." As Zara prepared to face her father, the Zorgans struck. Remnants of their once mighty fleet, now led by a warlord even more vicious than the last, launched lightning raids on Talaxian and human outposts. They struck hard and fast, leaving devastation in their wake, before vanishing back into the void. Rhaegor scrambled to respond, rallying his forces and calling in human reinforcements. Among them were fresh faces, new recruits eager to prove themselves in the fight against the Syndicate and the Zorgons. But even as they raced to counter the attacks, a message came through, a message that stopped Rhaegor's heart. It was from Ryan's old team, the humans who had fought and bled alongside him. Ryan was alive, held captive by the Syndicate. "We have to get him back," Rhaegor said, his voice brooking no argument. "We owe him that much." Plans were hastily drawn, strike teams assembled. They would hit the Syndicate where it hurt, smash into their secret base, and bring Ryan home. But when Ryan lifted his head, there was no recognition in his eyes, only a cold, programmed hatred. "I have no home," he rasped. "Only my mission, to destroy you all." Rhaegor's heart sank. The Syndicate had broken him, turned him into a weapon now aimed at the heart of the Talaxian-human alliance. As alarms blared and Syndicate forces closed in, Rhaegor made a vow. He would find a way to reach Ryan, to bring him back from the brink, no matter the cost. Ryan's mind reeled as Rhaegor and Zara strapped him into the neural interface chair. The cold metal bit into his skin, the hum of the machine filling his ears. He thrashed against his restraints, a snarl twisting his features. "Geocant, you won't break me," he growled, his eyes wild. "I know my purpose. The Syndicate showed me the truth." Zara's face was a mask of determination as she calibrated the interface. "No, Ryan, they lied to you, they twisted your mind, but we're going to remind you of who you really are." Rhaegor stood beside her, his jaw clenched. "This will work, it has to." The machine whirred to life, tendrils of energy snaking towards Ryan's temples. He screamed as they made contact, his body arching in pain. Images flooded his mind, fragmented and chaotic, memories that weren't his own. He saw himself through Rhaegor's eyes, standing tall and proud on the battlefield, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. He felt the Talaxians' grudging respect turn to genuine admiration as they fought side by side. Zara's memories washed over him next. Late nights poring over Zorgon tech, the thrill of discovery as they worked in tandem, the warmth of her smile, the fire in her eyes as she spoke of a future free from war. Ryan's resistance began to crumble. His screams turned to sobs as the weight of his actions crashed down on him, the lives he'd taken, the friends he'd betrayed, all in service of a lie. "I'm sorry," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry." Rhaegor gripped his shoulder, his voice rough with emotion. "It's not your fault, Ryan. The Syndicate did this to you, but you're stronger than them. You always have been." As the neural link faded, Ryan's mind cleared. The fog of the Syndicate's conditioning lifted, replaced by a burning determination. He met Rigor and Zara's eyes. A fire rekindled within him. "We have to stop them," he said, his voice steely. "The Syndicate, the Zorgons, all of it. I have information, access codes, intel on their operations. We can hit them where it hurts." Rhaegar grinned, a predatory gleam in his eye. "Now that sounds like the Ryan I know." In the days that followed, the trio launched a series of blistering attacks on Syndicate strongholds. Ryan's inside knowledge proved invaluable, allowing them to bypass security systems and strike at critical infrastructure. They hit weapons depots, supply lines, communication hubs. Each victory brought them one step closer to unraveling the Syndicate's web of influence. But during one fateful raid, they stumbled upon a horror beyond imagining. Hidden within a fortified research compound, they found the fruits of the Syndicate's most twisted experiments. Zorgon DNA spliced with Talaxian, human, and other species. Monstrous hybrids floating in tanks, their forms warped and twisted, and worst of all, soldiers. Rows upon rows of them, engineered for raw strength and aggression. Ryan felt bile rise in his throat. My God, they're building an army. Rhaegar's face was grim. Not just an army, a doomsday weapon. If they unleash these abominations... "We won't let that happen," Zara said fiercely. "We shut this place down here and now, destroy the research, the specimens, everything." But as alarms began to blare and Syndicate troops flooded the compound, Ryan knew it wouldn't be that simple. They were outnumbered, outgunned, with no backup and no escape route. He looked to Rhaegar, saw the same realization in the Talaxians' eyes. They were in for the fight of their lives. But as he hefted his weapon and prepared to charge into the fray, Ryan felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. This was where he was meant to be, not as a pawn of the Syndicate, but as a warrior, a protector, side by side with his friends, his comrades, fighting for a cause greater than any one of them. He met Rhaegar's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. For the Talaxians, for humanity, for the future. Ryan charged forward, a battle cry on his lips, ready to meet his destiny head-on. Laser fire filled the air, the stench of burnt flesh and ozone thick in Ryan's nostrils. He dove for cover behind a shattered tank, Zara and Rhaegar close on his heels. Rhaegar popped up from cover, his rifle spitting plasma bolts into the advancing horde of Syndicate troops. Easier said than done. We're a bit outnumbered here. Ryan gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Then his eyes fell on a rack of cylindrical devices on the far wall, Zorgon plasma grenades, highly unstable and highly explosive. Moments later, Ryan was sprinting across the battle-scarred lab, a satchel full of armed grenades bouncing at his hip. Plasma bolts sizzled past him, searing his flesh, but he pushed on. He reached the central lab, a cavernous space filled with bubbling tanks and humming machinery. At its heart, a glowing cylinder pulsed with sickly green light. The master genetic template. Ryan didn't hesitate. He hurled the satchel, watching it arc through the air in seeming slow motion. It struck the base of the cylinder and erupted in a blinding flash of plasma fire. The explosion was deafening. A wave of searing heat washed over Ryan, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, the breath driven from his lungs. He tried to respond, but his voice wouldn't cooperate. His vision swam, darkening at the edges. He tasted blood, felt the sticky wetness of it on his lips. Zara's face appeared above him, streaked with soot and blood. "Hold on, Ryan, just hold on. We're going to get you out of here." But as the darkness closed in, Ryan wasn't sure there was any getting out. Not for him. He'd known the risks, known the price that might be demanded of him. In a way, it seemed fitting. He'd given his life once for the Talaxians. Now he'd given it again for Talaxians and humans alike, for a future free of the Syndicate's malevolent influence. As Zara and Rhaegar's voices faded, replaced by a roaring silence, Ryan felt a strange sense of peace. He'd played his part, done what needed to be done. The rest was up to them now. His final thought before the void claimed him was of the bonds he'd forged, the friendships that had redefined him. Rhaegor, Zara, his human comrades, they would carry on the fight. And in that fight, in that unbreakable unity of purpose, Ryan knew his sacrifice would not be in vain. The darkness took him then, and he knew no more. The Syndicate base loomed before them, a monolith of dark metal and pulsing energy. Ryan checked his weapons, the weight of them familiar in his hands. Beside him, Rhaegar's cybernetic eye glowed red, his jaw set. "This ends today," the Talaxian growled, "one way or another." Ryan nodded grimly. "For all our sakes, it has to." They moved forward, their team fanning out behind them. Human and Talaxian united in purpose. The base's defenses came alive, laser turrets swiveling to track their approach. They scattered, taking cover behind twisted hunks of metal. "Zara, you're up," Rhaegor barked. Zara, her face a mask of determination, sprinted forward, dodging laser blasts with almost preternatural grace. She reached the base's wall and slammed a breaching charge against it. The explosion ripped a hole in the metal, and they charged through into the heart of the enemy stronghold. Inside was chaos. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing. Syndicate soldiers swarmed to meet them, a mix of Zorgon, human, and things in between. Ryan and Rhaegor led the charge, their weapons spitting fire. They fought back to back, covering each other instinctively. But the enemy kept coming. For every soldier they cut down, two more took their place. Ryan saw his team falling around him, human and Talaxian blood mixing on the metal floor. A laser blast caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. She fell, her blood splattering the console. "Zara!" Rhaegor roared. He fought his way to her side, cradling her in his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, her face pale. "Father," she whispered, "I have to stop him." Rhaegor's face hardened. He nodded curtly. "Go. We'll hold them here." Zara pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. She met Ryan's eyes across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. Then she was gone, disappearing into the depths of the facility. Ryan and Rhaegor fought on, an island of resistance in a sea of enemies. They pushed deeper into the base, following the schematics Zara had downloaded. They had to reach the heart of the facility, had to stop the production of the hybrids. A door loomed ahead, larger than the rest. Ryan slammed his fist against the control panel, and it slid open with a hiss. They stepped through, weapons raised. The chamber was vast, filled with row upon row of tanks, and floating in each tank, suspended in glowing green fluid, was a monstrosity. Part Zorgon, part human, twisted and warped into something new, something terrible. "My God," Ryan breathed. "What have they done?" The voice was familiar. Ryan spun, his rifle snapping up. There across the chamber stood Dr. Zalox. The Zorgon scientist smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Zalox spread his hands. "And I thank you for that trust. It made you so very easy to manipulate her." Ryan's finger tightened on the trigger. "It's over, Zalox. Surrender now, and maybe you'll live to stand trial." Zalox laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Oh, I think not. You see, my work here is just beginning. These," he gestured to the tanks, "are the future, the next stage in evolution, and you, my friends, will not live to see it." He pressed a button on the console before him. The tanks began to drain, the liquid spilling across the floor. The creatures inside twitched, then began to move, their eyes opening, their claws flexing. Ryan and Rhaegor opened fire, but the hybrids were fast, faster than anything they'd faced before. They leaped from the tanks, shrugging off laser blasts like rain. Ryan felt claws rake his armor, felt the hot sting of his own blood. He fought like a man possessed, laser fire and fists flying. Beside him, Rhaegar was a whirlwind of destruction, his rifle barking, his cybernetic fist crushing bone and metal alike. But it wasn't enough. The hybrids kept coming, an endless tide of claws and teeth and fury. Ryan felt his strength waning, his vision blurring. He stumbled, fell to one knee. A hybrid loomed over him, its claws raised for the killing blow. Ryan closed his eyes, waiting for the end. Regor stood over him, the hybrid's claws buried in his chest. The Talaxian smiled, blood bubbling from his lips. "Get up, Ryan," he rasped. "This fight isn't over yet." Ryan surged to his feet, renewed energy flooding through him. He fought with a savage fury, laser blasts and grenades ripping through the hybrid ranks. And then, through the smoke and the chaos, he saw him. Xalox trying to slip away, to escape the carnage he had unleashed. Ryan roared, a sound of pure rage and pain. He charged, leaping over the bodies of the fallen, his rifle forgotten, his hands reaching for the Zorgon's throat. They crashed to the ground, a tangle of limbs and hate. Ryan felt Xalox's claws tear at his flesh, felt the Zorgon's hot breath on his face, but he didn't stop, didn't falter. His hands found Xalox's throat, began to squeeze. "For Rigor," he snarled, "for Zara, for every life you've taken, every world you've destroyed, this ends now." Xalox struggled, his eyes bulging, his claws scrabbling at Ryan's arms. But Ryan held on, his grip tightening, his eyes burning with a fierce, righteous anger. And then, with a final gasping rattle, Xalox went still. Ryan let go, let the body slump to the floor. He stood, his chest heaving, his body aching with 100 wounds. Around him the battle still raged. The hybrids, leaderless now, fought with a desperate, mindless ferocity. But the Talaxians and humans, united in their grief and their rage, fought harder. Ryan picked up his rifle, rejoined the fray. They would win this, he knew. They had to. For Riga, for Zara, for all those who had fallen, they would... You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.